Thanks, Bree, and welcome everybody to what I can't believe is our final Tiger Talk. But you talk about going out with a bang. I think this is the way to do it. Our Tiger Talks are usually an hour, and tonight we've allotted an hour and a half, which is good because I could probably spend an hour and a half going over the credentials for everybody that's on our panel today. I'm going to introduce everybody on the panel. I'll keep the introductions as brief as I can. I'll give you some of their credentials, and then we'll weave them in as we go. But this is going to be twofold today. Obviously, Brian Kolze, the head softball coach at Pacific, a storied career. I want to reflect on that. But this is about his coaching tree and the ladies that have come through the program, both as players and coaches, some as both, and have gone on to do great things around the country. So I want to get into their stories. And I also want to talk about what makes a great coach, because obviously, you know, flowing from Kolze, you have many great coaches that have done a lot of great things, and there's got to be something to that. So I want to explore that as well. So without further ado, our panel, first of all, Brian Kolze in his 29th season as the head coach of the softball team at Pacific, the dean of coaches now at Pacific, 781 wins. And he has coached 6 All-Americans, a 4-time Big West Coach of the Year, among his other credentials, again, which we'll get into. Cindy Ball-Malone, who's now the Central Florida head coach, played at Pacific 1999 to 2002. And if I'm wrong, ladies, correct me on the dates. I had a lot of numbers that I'm dealing with here. So forgive me if I'm wrong and you jump in and correct me. But played at Pacific 1999 to 2002, a 2-time All-American, and holds multiple Pacific program records. Gina Carbonatto is now the head coach at Santa Clara, graduated in 2007, the first Tiger to finish her career with an average of 400, a batting average of 400, and a 3-time All-American. Kristy Schroeder, the head coach at Cosumnes River College, formerly the head coach at UC Santa Barbara, an assistant from 1995 to 1998. And you might know her husband, Pete. He's the associate professor of sports management at the Eberhart School of Business at Pacific. She did not play at Pacific. She played at UCLA, a 4-year starter at shortstop, won 2 national championships, 1990 and 1992. She did earn a master's degree in sports psychology from Pacific. Kim Sowder, the head coach at Long Beach State, 13 years now. She worked with Kolze from 1993 to 1995 before taking the job at Long Beach State. And she is now 3-time Big West Coach of the Year. And with over 400 wins, she is the active wins leader among Big West coaches. And last but not least, Heather Tarr, who's the head coach at University of Washington. She coached at Pacific from 1999 to 2004. From what I understand, she was Kolze's first full-time assistant, made 4 NCAA tournaments in her time at Pacific. And she is kind of intertwined with a lot of the ladies on here. Cindy Ball was on the team when Heather was coaching, when Cindy was done playing. Cindy became Brian's second assistant. And while Brian, Heather, and Cindy were coaching together, they recruited Gina Carbonatto, who became the program's only 3-time All-American. So there you go. That is our STEAM panel. It only took me, I think, 5 minutes. So I'm happy with that. I'm going to start with Kolze. I got a trivia question for you, Kolze. Who has a stronger coaching tree, Brian Kolze or Bill Belichick?
Truthfully, I think we do, because the honest truth is our young ladies that have been in this program that become head coaches have won a lot more, and none of them have been fired.
I just think it speaks volumes. I mean, you know, I'm a big Belichick guy. I'm a New England Patriots fan, but it just struck me. I'm thinking about this today and getting ready in my mind for this, and like I'm in awe, Kolze, of the coaches that have come through your program. Kolze, I want to get into your coaching pedigree and kind of what shaped you as a coach and what shaped your philosophies.
Well, I think it started, and I learned a lot because, truthfully, I was like in the real world before I went into coaching. I had a sales job. I was traveling all over the country. And I just felt at a certain time, I'll never forget where I was. I've told this story before. I was at a Bird's Eye frozen food plant up in Oregon, waiting on my umpteenth engineer. And I said, 5 years from now, this is not what I want to be doing. And I didn't mean I didn't like the job, but it just wasn't for me. I love the travel.
About how old were you at the time?
27. I was 27. And what I did is I searched around. I applied for basically a volunteer job at UNLV. My roommate from college lived there. I knew one of the assistant football coaches. So he said, you have a place to live. You don't have to worry about money. So I basically left my job with the support of, ironically, of a Pacific alum whose son was a great baseball player, Pat McFarland. His father, John McFarland, was my boss, and he fully supported me getting out of that and doing what I wanted to do. So I packed up, moved to Las Vegas. Shan McDonald, tremendous lady who just went in their Hall of Fame, was my mentor and gave me a job for free. And I worked my way up. I was there 4 years. It was a tremendous experience. And then after that, I was offered a job at Sacramento State. And then it was an interim for a year. The coach retired. We all interviewed for the head coach. I was one of the few that interviewed for the head coaching job. And I got contacted by Pacific. And I was interviewed for both jobs at the same time. And for about 6 weeks, I went out, hung out by the pool by day and hit golf balls at night, waiting to know what was going to happen. And then I got hired at Pacific, and I've been here ever since.
What was it about softball? How did you get into softball, which is outside of rec leagues, it's predominantly women's sport?
It was really ironic. I had just gotten involved in the sport, playing fast pitch. I had played college baseball. I was a very average player in college baseball. Truthfully, without a doubt, I was a lot smarter as a player than I was physically gifted as a player. And it just kind of was something I wanted. Then I kind of watched my buddy's daughter's team play, and it was like the education part kind of always drew me, because I really didn't appreciate education until I was done with college as much as I did while I was in college, like most people. And it was just something that I gravitated to that because, truthfully, I gave it a shot because as a baseball guy, if you're not a guy that played pro ball, got released, or you go back and work at your alma mater, that's really the only type of baseball jobs that were available back when I got started in the late 80s.
How did you adapt to the world of softball, being a former baseball player? Was it different? Was it vastly different? Was it not as different as you would have thought?
I think in how I approached people was the same, but what I really did is I checked my ego in at the door that I didn't know everything, and I tried to learn as much as I could, as fast as I could, because I'm not going to lie to you. Cindy will tell you, I wasn't a great pitching coach. That was not my forte. I knew more about baseball pitching than I did softball pitching, but just some fundamental things. And I was very lucky. We were very successful at UNLV. Shan had some great friends. That Carol Spanks, who's in the Hall of Fame, was a longtime player that I used as a mentor. Yvette Gerard, who at the time was at Louisiana Lafayette. Joyce Compton, who was at South Carolina. They were all friends. So I would get to work their camps or clinics, or they'd come out and work ours. And you just had to be a sponge and learn as much as you could, and really check your ego in at the door.
That's really interesting. What is also interesting, and I'm learning some of these factoids about you, and I've known you for years, but I'm learning some of these now really for the first time. A lot of times I find in life that people excel in certain areas where they weren't trained. It's just a thing. People will get into certain areas. They didn't have any real formal training, but yet they find a way people and become successful, which to me kind of resonates in what you told me. That being said, what shaped your philosophies as a coach? Did you even have any kind of philosophies when you decided to make the jump from your career at what was it before? In sales. I was trying to think of it. Was it what food brand?
It was actually, no, it wasn't for Bird's Eye. It was an engineering company that made equipment that went into the food industry.
Okay.
At the time. But I think what shaped me was I learned a lot of things on what to do and maybe what not to do, how to treat people, how to not treat people. But I was blessed to be able to give input. And I always said that I'm going to hire people that can bring something to our program that will be different. And I'm going to let them coach. I'm going to learn from them. They're going to work with me. They're not going to work for me. And that's a big difference, I think, that at that stage of my life and where I was at, that I won't lie to you, that I might be bringing someone on board that knows something more about a certain area in the coaching because of their experience. And I'm okay with it, because you need to hire people that are going to strengthen what you're weak in, and you strengthen them on what they're weak in. And that's kind of always been the philosophy I've had, whether it's how to work on a field, how to recruit, how to coach, how to direct, how to organize, how to raise money, all those things come into play.
It's a pretty great philosophy. You kind of touched on it a little while ago, but take us through the process of going from UNLV to Pacific. I mean, you're a native of the Valley, right? You're a Lodi native.
Yeah.
So getting that job, what did it mean to you, and how did it go down?
Well, to be honest, I sent my resume out, and Shan was willing to listen to me. I went out there and met with her. I walked in, they were doing conditioning on the track, introduced myself. She knew I was coming. We had dinner, we sat down, and that's how we met. She checked on some of my background, though it wasn't really in athletics. She did know the special teams coach who was there, and talked to him about, she was probably more concerned about my character, which I totally understand because she didn't know me from Adam. And she allowed me to volunteer because she knew, and I worked hard, and it was just kind of one of those things. And I think what really helped is after that year, she let me do a little recruiting, and I brought some names back on some of the people, even from our area here in Northern California, to look at. And it turns out they were really good players. So actually, really good players can make you look smart. And she ended up recruiting a young lady out of Lodi who was a two-time All-American there, recruited another one that was an All-American that went to Cal. You know, it was just kind of one of those things that worked out. And I really think just like all these young ladies, when they came to work here, everybody's work ethic has been tremendous. And they came here knowing, bottom line, you're not going to get rich. You're going to get an opportunity, and everybody's flourished with that opportunity. And that's because it was the opportunity I was given at probably an older age than most of them were.
I'm going to go around the horn here in just a sec, but you brought up something, and I want to ask you before I kind of send it around the horn. Recruiting, you know, it's kind of a nuanced thing. How did you go about recruiting a sport that you didn't play? I mean, most people who recruit, you know kind of the ins and outs. I know baseball is similar, but what was that process like for you? And was there a learning curve recruiting for softball?
Well, you have a couple of them that were recruited. They're on this thing tonight, you know, with Cindy and Gina. You know, I really think with the recruiting part, the most important thing that I learned is be honest, okay? But don't be intimidating, and don't take anything personal when you're dealing with a 16-year-old young lady, no matter what comes out of their mouth or how they act in regards to that. And just be honest and be humble, and always talk about your program and what it can do for them, or what the university can do for them, more than you talk about what you can do for them. That's kind of how I did it in the early stages, you know, as building a resume. And we were blessed to get some tremendous athletes, but I really think too, making them comfortable, especially the parents at that time, was something, because back then you used to go into young ladies' living rooms and stuff and do those types of things that you don't do anymore. Ironically, this year you're doing it off videotape for, you know, and
right?
Some of it isn't very good, you know, but we're dealing with that. But I think maybe, you know, you talk to a couple of them about it, because they might tell you what had more to do with it than what I thought had to do with it, since I recruited them.
Yeah, I'm going to get to them right now. I wanted to lay the foundation with kind of your story first, and your philosophies and your entry into all of this. I want to go to Kim.
Quick though, before I did get here, I was offered by Irene Shea, who was a great Hall of Fame softball coach, who's hired me at Sacramento State to be there in the interim when she was retiring. And then I was there for the year before I came here to Pacific.
Okay. I want to jump to Kim, because Kim, you were there in the early days of Kolze at Pacific, again, 1993 to 1995. What was Brian like in those times when he's first starting at UOP?
Kim, there might be recruits watching, so be kind.
First off, I have this picture. I don't know if you can see it. This was
there it is.
Back in the day. We made the magazine for the school.
Wow.
So yeah, it was pretty cool. Brian, honestly, has not changed one bit. So he was full of the energy that he still has. More than anything, cared about his players. You could tell that was the most important thing, always to him, and that has not changed one bit. He has a huge heart. He works extremely hard, and he really is the same he was when I was there.
I believe that, because he's the same as he was when I first met him, which is now going back like 14 years. Was he comfortable in the world of softball, about as comfortable as you could be, or was he still kind of growing in that world?
He seemed very comfortable to me. I mean, he's not shy. He definitely is not afraid. He knew a lot of people, and I actually knew Brian from being a player because he was at UNLV, who was in our conference. And we used to play, he was coaching there, and we played against them both in conference and at the World Series several times. And so I actually knew him just even as a player. So I think, no, he was well on his way already.
Kristy, I'm going to ask you kind of the same thing, because you were there starting in 1995. What was the Brian Kolze experience like back in the mid 90s, in the throes of the Clinton administration?
Yeah. Well, it was just Brian and myself, so yeah. I mean, just like when Kim was there. So it was a different world. It was the two of you and your team, and you were best buddies because you had to be, because you ran everything through the other person. One thing I know about Brian, like Kim said, he definitely cared about his players as much as any coach has ever cared about his players. But his ability to recruit was far better than anybody's that I've come across. In fact, still today, when I look at different people and teams recruiting and all that, I mean, Brian, he knows people, he has the contacts, he's great at communicating with the players that are coming in, he's honest, he's loyal to his players once he recruits them. And that was one of the biggest things that I took away when I went on to coach on my own, was just that, hey, gosh, I had the best teaching me how to recruit. He took me to in-home visits and kind of brought me through the whole process of everything. So, and then the other thing, you talk about asking what Brian knew as a softball coach. I agree. I thought he knew a ton, but I laughed because he let me do whatever I wanted to do. So then I'm going back and say, maybe he didn't know as much as I thought he knew, because he said, hey, you just run with it. What do you want to do today? And so, it was a great starting point for me, because it taught me so much as far as coaching, just with every aspect, because it was hitting and defense and you name it. And he let me do so much, and I'm just really thankful for that. But it was a great time. I mean, some of the time that I spent at Pacific, I mean, was probably my most memorable and the most life-changing for me.
Kolze, I'm going to go back to you. That's a neat little sleight of hand in life, I think, is when you're in a situation where maybe you realize you're not the expert in a certain area. You recognize good people around you, and you kind of let them take the wheel. And in doing so, I think you'll learn, not only what they can do, but also learn what they have to offer and learn from them. Can you speak to doing that and what it was like to do that?
Well, I think I've always felt that like I said, you hire people to work with you, not for you. And I really respect all the young ladies I've had and young men in my staff in letting them run. I think it's better to let them run and fail and you adjust than it is to not give them the opportunity at all. And it also, we can all say it somewhere in our career, you've got to let that happen, whether you agree or not, because you have to build the trust within the athletes too, that are underneath your coaching staff, that those people are there to help them. And that even if they make a mistake or something you don't agree with, you always talk about it later behind closed doors. You never do that in the middle of the team and stuff. And there's probably been things these young ladies, when I was the head coach, didn't agree with, but nobody ever talked to me about it until we were on our own, if that makes sense. No matter how hard it is, they were all very mature in that, because none of us is perfect and we're going to make mistakes. That's just part of it. We make coaching mistakes every day. But I think it was really like, let people do what you brought them in to do and guide it from there, not tell them what you want them to do and expect them to follow your lead on everything. I don't think that makes for a harmonious relationship. And like Kristy said, and Kim, it was me and them when they were with me, part-time assistant, they were all doing other things. I mean, Kim probably made more at Chili's going home working in the summer than she made getting paid for the 9 months she was the assistant coach at Pacific. Every summer, I'm like, absolutely, go. You're going to make more money. Come back to our camp. That's it. I'll recruit. I'll have you with me when we're in Southern California. We'll make it work. And that's just kind of how you rolled back then. And so that's kind of how it was.
I was going to ask you next about that because Kristy and Kim bring up great points about it being kind of a mom and pop shop back in those days. Sometimes when you're working in that environment, you probably benefit from that in many ways, don't you?
Oh, no question. No question. You appreciate things so much more. I mean, you can talk to them about where the sport is now and where it was then when we started. You can, when you get to Heather, you can talk to, coming from here to a BCS school, Cindy, where she's at now, she kind of went from here, then to kind of the middle when she was at Boise versus what she has now at UCF. Everybody that's on here, everybody should go through that. They would appreciate things a lot more. Cindy Ball said I'll never forget the one thing she said the first year she was with us. And you can talk to her about it later. She walked in, she goes, "Coach," I go, "What?" She goes, every kid that's a college athlete should have to redshirt their first year and hang out with the coaches to know what it's like to be a coach and have to coach them before you have to coach them. It's exactly what she said. She came in my office one day and said that, and it's so very true.
So I'm not going to wait. I'm going to ask Cindy about that right now because, I mean, Cindy, you've gone on obviously to do great things. You're now at UCF, but how much did that help you, redshirting and kind of learning the intricacies of being a coach and what that all entails?
Well, I didn't get to redshirt, but I think just having the opportunity, no, all good. But I think just being able to, have the times where you're coaching these kids, and you're like, well, wait a minute, why didn't I do that when I was playing? And that makes so much sense now when you're teaching it. And so what I think really in my time, I was recruited by Kristy and Coach, but I played under Coach and Coach Tarr. And they let us run the camps. And that's what I think, that was my redshirt year, I guess you could say. But it was so true of, you learn so much being able to go in there. And we didn't have, I don't remember Clara back in the day. So if I get you in trouble, Coach, I'm sorry, but
that's
I don't
good. We didn't have Clara. We're golden.
Okay, good.
We didn't have it when I played in college, or else we'd all been in trouble.
Yeah.
No Clara back then. You're good.
But what I loved is I probably was, I was not so much a gym rat, so to speak. I was the office rat. So I would pick their brains all the time as a player. And I think that had I had more time to do that, I would have been able to play much like my senior year earlier on. So I think that's what I meant. But honestly, Coach has a better memory on that stuff than I do. I used to have the elephant brain, and then I had kids. So
Did you know that at some point you'd want to go into coaching?
Absolutely not. No. I actually remember my first semester, I was making my schedule and I brought it to Coach, and, I was a hitting pitcher. So how to get all that time in, developing in the bullpen and hitting and playing a little bit of first base. And I bring my schedule and I said, okay, I've got chemistry and biology and stats and kinesiology. And I was all excited about this because I'm going to be a doctor. And he looks at it and he goes, follow me. And my schedule, 3 labs. And, I didn't understand it. But I was so thankful for it. After going through everything, he saved my life because I would have never made it through that first semester. But I was kind of one of those that went through all my education, and then I did my internship and I didn't like it. And so he said, why don't you stay on and be a grad assistant. And I mean, I haven't looked back since. It's so it kind of, like Coach said, how it fell into his lap, it kind of fell into mine too.
What drew you to Pacific, and why did you end up choosing Pacific? And not to blow up Kristy here, because I know she tried to get you too, but why did you end up going with Kolze and becoming a Tiger?
I'm going to have to say it's honestly the fact that he could connect with my music. He asked me what my favorite CD was on my first recruiting opportunity with him. And I said, well, the last one I bought was the Footloose soundtrack. And he knew every song on that. So I was like, I could totally play with this guy, or for this guy, you know? So it just kind of clicked by then at that point. And I mean, I was one of those players. I had a young parents. I didn't really know the recruiting process too much. I mean, Coach talks about going in our living rooms, and I think I had my 5-year-old brother and 6-year-old sister running around, and it was just like a whirlwind. So being able to connect and feel like I was at home was really what made it, you know, fit for me. And then meeting the team, that was huge. So
do you still listen to the Footloose soundtrack on occasion?
Ironically, I played it in our scrimmage today for the girls. So.
No way. That is too funny. By the way, shout out to
scrimmage.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
What's the scrimmage?
This guy, no. Yes, us over here in Florida, a little different, I guess.
By the way, Cindy, shout out to you, because I know you guys were off to your best start in program history at UCF, 16-2 before they had to cancel the season. I know that, I mean, it's got to be bittersweet for you, right? To reflect back on that insane start and to know that that it had to come to an end.
Yes, I remember finding out and having to tell the team, and I cried like a baby. But I mean, everything happens for a reason, and I think that what's interesting is how people respond. And I learned that from all these people in this room, my teammates that are here, and the coaches that I coached with, and even players that I got to coach, and just how you respond to things. And so you surround yourself with great people, like Coach Kolze said, and, you know, great things come from it.
Sure. All right, I'm going to jump over to Heather Tarr. In so many ways, kind of the common denominator in this whole thing, and I laid it out in the introductions. But while Kolze, Heather, and Cindy were coaching together, they recruited Gina. So you kind of have Heather in the middle of all these people. But you, Heather, played at Washington and then coached at Pacific from '99 to 2004, and you were actually Kolze's first full-time assistant. What was the process like getting to Pacific and getting the assistant job and becoming the first full-time softball assistant?
I was so lucky that I was asked to be part of the program in the way that it happened. I was playing in the pro league that we had at the time in softball, and it was in Tampa, Florida. And through the coach I played for, or assistant coach I played for, John Rittman, at Washington, he was at Stanford as the head coach. Well, Coach Kolze knew who I was. And so John Rittman forwarded him my name, and boss, we're just going to call him boss. It's just easier for me to say boss. Boss calls me and starts talking to me about coming to Pacific because Kristy left. And I'm thinking, like, I don't even know if I want to coach. Like, I did want to coach, but the coach I played for at Washington, Teresa Wilson, amazing coach. But like, I mean, she literally dedicated her entire life to softball, and it was her life. And I was like, I don't want to do that. And so boss tells me, like, we'll call Kristy and see what I'm like to work for. I'm not like that, and I think you'll like it. And so I call Kristy and I, talk her through, like, okay, well, what about this? And I don't even know if she remembers the call, but she was talking me through, you'll do it. And she kind of gave me some tips about how it's going to be and that I could afford to live there. And of course, she's probably thinking, like, you spoiled brat, like, I barely got paid anything and now you're going to go full time. But I talked to Kristy about what it would be like to work for Kolze, and she gave me like some hints. She's like, well, he's going to be down the line. He'll be talking to, Jay, the field guy, and he'll be doing this, and he'll be doing his fundraising, and he'll be doing this or that, and you'll be able to coach and be able to do everything. I was thinking, okay, I think I think I could do this. And so because of that phone conversation, honestly, with Kristy, and then obviously the opportunity that Kolze gave me, I got in the door, and lucky me.
And yeah, obviously gone on to do great things, and now you're the head coach at your alma mater at Washington. You bring up a great point with Kolze kind of not being, I don't want to say not being absorbed totally with softball, because in so many ways he is, but I guess being well-rounded in that venue. How much did that impact you? I mean, his well-rounded nature, I guess, and his not kind of being buried with softball all the time, because I know that's something that you didn't want to be.
Again, just literally so lucky to be at a place like Pacific. I mean, at the time when I came in, the 49ers had invested all that money in the facilities, and we had so much stuff. Although football wasn't there when I was there, it was gone, but a lot of the players were there during that football time. And so just that the opportunity to be with someone like Brian Kolze, who literally isn't going to tell you what to do. He's not going to micromanage you. It was the perfect place for me, because I came from Washington. I played, we had all these at the time, we had all these resources and all this stuff. And then you go to Pacific as the lonely assistant coach, and you're thinking, well, who's the compliance person, and who's this person? Who's that? It's you. And who's the academic advisor? Well, it's this person, and she's also the secretary. So through that, though, I got to meet so many cool coaches that were on staff as well. Like the family environment and atmosphere at Pacific, like I still to this day, like keep in touch with all those coaches that I knew then. So I just say one thing, like Kolze doesn't micromanage, and the success of the program is because of him, but it's because he knows his strengths. And I'm excited for the program even now because of the staff that he's building now. It reminds me of kind of like all of our eras. And I think he has some people with him now that are able to complement what his strengths are. And I'm excited to see what those gals end up doing, because it's much like all of us. He gave us this opportunity. We take it in and we go and run with it. And it's a pretty cool thing to see right now.
As an aside, one of the things that has struck me so much, I've hosted, I don't know how many of these Tiger Talks we've done, but we've done multiple sports, and we've even done football, which is no longer at Pacific. But in the common theme in all of these is that at Pacific, you don't have some of the resources as the major power conference schools, but it's amazing how much that makes you better, and how much it's made anybody who's come through there as an athlete, and especially as a coach and even an administrator, better, because you have to really want it, and you have to really hone your skills. So it's no surprise to me that you have that to say. I'm going to keep it with you, Heather. What was it like to be at Pacific, part of Pacific softball, the era in which you coached, 1999 to 2004? I know you guys were doing great things then. Take us kind of back in time a little bit.
Well, again, I was lucky because I got all of, Kristy and the histories work. We end up having Brandy MacArthur and just a great senior class the year that I was in my first year. So we had awesome players. And then we were kind of like that little just sniper team that could sneak up on the team that either disrespects us or doesn't know who we are. Obviously loved playing Stanford for that reason specifically, and beating them a lot. So just the opportunity to learn and grow and become the coach that I am today. I credit Kolze and my time at Pacific just for that. But yeah, I don't know. I don't remember the question specifically. Maybe I'm not going where you want me to go, but
no, that's exactly it. I know that in your time at Pacific, you made 4 NCAA tournaments, and that's, I just love capturing eras that were really great, and getting the perspective of people that were able to witness it firsthand, because it's a special thing. And I think maybe we all want to live vicariously through your memories of what it was like.
Yeah.
What was it like? What was it like watching Cindy pitch? And then what was it like recruiting Gina? Like I said, you're kind of the common denominator in so many of these players here.
Well, again, I was lucky. So the first day I show up, I was late to the season. I got there like mid to late I think September, and they had already been going. And Kolze let me come in late because I had just, gotten done with the grind of a season in the pro league. And so I show up and I'm like, all right, where are we at? What do we got? And I'm like, looking at the media guide, like trying to figure out like, who are these people? I can't remember these names. I got to remember these names. And then Cindy comes up to me and she's like, guess what? Like, I wished I could have gone to Washington. I knew all these players that you got to play with. And, immediately I'm like, oh, I love this gal. She's so cool. We're going to have a good connection. So, she and I had a good bond, and Coach Kolze gave me like good learn this as a young assistant. You better keep the line. You're not the teammate, you're the coach. And so that's obviously helped me to this day, mentor our new assistant coaches and younger assistant coaches. And, forever grateful for that. And I wish my mom could be on this call. She doesn't know how to use Zoom, but literally every time I bring up Brian's name or my time at Pacific, she's like, that's the reason why you have the job at Washington. And it absolutely is. Like, how did a assistant coach at Pacific get to take over a program like Washington? Like somehow, some way I had the confidence through the experience that I had at Pacific to be able to say, look, I can do this. I can do this job. Now, looking back on it, I don't know what I was thinking, but it definitely gave me the confidence, and I credit Kolze for all of that to this day. And so he makes me buy him these like nice steak dinners in Vegas sometimes when we go there. But other than that, I owe him everything I have.
Well, obviously it wasn't a dumb accident, Heather. You won a national championship at UW, and you were runner-up in 2018. So obviously they were onto something. You didn't just stumble into it. What was it like recruiting Gina? Because I'm going to bring in Gina next, but I kind of want to get a little foreshadowing here with recruiting her to the program.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't talk about Gina's thing. But it was cool because Coach Kolze had, he had an eye for the opportunity to get Gina. So Gina was, I think we kind of got her through Stanford's like drop the ball on her. And so it was cool because I was like, yes, a Washington girl. She's really good. And, she comes from this cool, scrappy program, the Lake Breeze, and, they do awesome things. And so we were just so excited I was excited to have a Washington kid come. And, she got hurt her freshman year. And that was like a really hard thing for our program to have to deal with. Ironically, it was at Long Beach State when that happened. And, but I just remember the impact that Gina had when she set foot in the program. And she wasn't too big and she wasn't too cool for everybody else. She had her own little personality that was fun and attractive to everybody. And I just think she, from the time she set foot on campus, she was fun to coach. She had a ton of energy. And then, 6 years later, we bring her on our staff and she helps us win the national championship at Washington. So that's woven pretty deep with all of us. There's a lot of woven stories if you go down in there.
Yeah.
I have to interrupt and tell one story about Gina.
Please, anybody can interrupt at any time.
Yeah.
About you guys.
Well, I mean, as a new coach and just kind of like learning from two of the best, right? Gina Carbonatto comes into the program, and we open at Baylor that year. And we're talking about the lineup and whatnot as coaching staff, and Coach Tarr, I'm sorry, I call her HT, so I got to do it. HT goes up to Gina and she goes, well, like, where do you think you're going to hit in the lineup? And Gina goes, I just hope I'm in it. And that was really like, that's who we are, right? Like, we never think that anything was given to us. I think as players, as coaches, as administrators at Pacific, we never think anything's given to us. And, here you have this kid that was a freshman All-American first team saying she just hopes she's in the lineup, right? So that for me was like, okay, you want to coach these kind of kids. Yes, the talent, but also like the person that you love them regardless, and you have fun with them regardless winning or losing, right? So that was one of my favorite moments of, coaching with Coach Tarr, Coach Kolze, and coaching Gina. So I thought it needed to be said.
That's a really cool story. All right, Gina, you're gonna have your say. I'm sorry it took us a little while to get around the horn to you, but graduated in 2007. Obviously, it's been mentioned a couple times now. 3-time All-American, and you and Cindy are the two that have your numbers retired. What was it like being recruited to Pacific in that process? And Heather talked about Stanford dropping the ball. What was that process like getting to UOP?
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, similar to what Cindy had said about, like, I didn't know anything about the recruiting process. Neither did a lot of the people I was around. And it was like, whoa, Stanford, what? Because being a small town kid from Washington, we knew UW just wasn't in the picture. The head coach that Heather played for, she was like, I don't recruit kids from Washington. So basically it was like, well, then I'm going to California. Woo. And I remember getting my first media guide was Cindy Ball on the front cover of the media guide. I'm sure I still have it, like from my recruiting package that Kolze probably sent off. But it was a Stanford camp. So we didn't have much money growing up. So my family all pitched in to send me to one camp. And so we go to Stanford camp, and I mean, they wanted me, but I mean, I don't think I was smart enough. I'm just going to throw it out there. And so that's where they dropped the ball. But then, I mean, Kolze being really good friends with the Stanford coaches at the time, and he comes and watches in Colorado. Then Heather flies up to Oregon just to watch me. And I'm like probably terrified as a little, 17-year-old, but I was just young, dumb, and having fun. So it was mainly, getting on campus, having an amazing recruiting trip with Beej, who's on this call, was my host. So she's from Washington. I'm actually in her house right now. So we're all connected. It runs deep. But it was a recruiting trip that obviously Kolze cares a ton. We got that. We understood that I was going to be able to play for two amazing coaches in Bear and HT. And then I remember the Hawaiians. I don't know if any of the Hawaiians are on here, but we were playing hacky sack on the recruiting trip. So they probably were the ones that like sold me at Pacific. So if they're on here, and I only got to play with one of them, Nicole Inouye, but playing hacky sack on my recruiting trip is probably like, yep, I belong here. So I committed shortly after, and never could have imagined going to California and getting to be, in the Division I world. And I think that's what set me out to say the things I said to Cindy and HT when I didn't know I was good enough to play. I was just playing hard. So
that's awesome. I want to bring this full circle here for a second. I talked with Kim to start about the Kolze experience in the early days when he first got to Pacific. Of the players that are on here, you're the most recent to play for Kolze. What was the Kolze experience like at a time where he was a seasoned vet at that time, as late as 2007? What was it like playing for him?
Yeah, so it's funny because I think as he got full-time assistants and probably had more people to help and more resources, I think everybody says like he was a mean coach early on, like that he was like really tough. Oh, Kristy's shaking her head. No.
Is that true? I can't even picture it.
He was really, really tough on everyone. And I didn't get that at all. I mean, maybe he'd throw his bat or something every once in a while, but in all reality, like
his temper, he had a great temper, but he couldn't necessarily control it that well.
His
emotional intelligence is much better now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, in all reality, like, I mean, we didn't see much of that. I think I was there the first year that he got married, and I got invited to his wedding. So I'm sure MJ, if MJ's on this call, his wife softened him up a little bit and made sure that he was taking care of us and not being too temper filled. So he was actually quite pleasant by the time I played for him.
Kolze, were you ever like ornery?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Can't even fathom it.
There were moments.
Okay.
Early on, I have to admit.
No, I think everybody has them, and especially coaches. I think it's obviously a high pressure thing. I want to jump back to Kim and to Kristy, and I'll start with Kim. When you kind of look down the line and see what you helped start at Pacific under Kolze, how does it make you feel? Do you feel a sense of pride? Do you feel what do you feel?
Well, I just feel very grateful that I have the opportunity. I look down the line and wow, it is so impressive, and it's all because of Brian and just the person he is and how much he cares about people and kind of showed us the way. I mean, I wasn't sure if I was going to go into coaching or not, and got the opportunity, and I had a blast. I loved my time at Pacific, and I don't have anything to do with all of these awesome coaches on here. It was definitely Brian, and I'm like so fortunate to have been a part of it and had that experience. It was a great time. I really, really enjoyed it, and always, think very fondly of my time and have great pride. Super proud to have started my career there.
Kristy, you were like back in the mom and pop days too. What's it like now, looking at what it's become and the success that's followed your tenure?
Yeah, I mean, it is funny because, you start and it's so new to you and you're young, and it was, I mean, such a great time. And like other people said, the community at Pacific was so different from any other place that I had been. You knew everybody knew you by name. They were rooting for you. They were going to the games. I mean, like, I don't know who said it, but, like Judy Arbini was doing everything for us on the front desk and running errands. And I mean, you just, Jay was in our office all the time, dragging the field, but everybody was there and all the coaches were so close. And even the coaching tree, like, we see here, it's just everybody, you have that connection. So if I go recruiting or I'm out at a tournament, it's like you see these people and you're like, you just kind of have that thing that you were at Pacific, you know the deal, and it was a great deal, and it was a great learning experience and a lot of fun, and you just have a special bond. And yeah, it's amazing to see what everybody's done. And yeah, I feel grateful as well. But yeah, Brian, I mean, he knows how to pick them, that's for sure.
All right, a couple of things here. So the chat today, it's not usually open because we're leery of people hacking, but the chat is open today. So, and I'm looking back, and it's hilarious, some of these things that are being said. But if you want to ask a question or share a story, you can do so through the chat. I'm seeing right here, and I want to ask Brian about it.
Oh God,
Kolze, are you a chirper from the dugout? Are you big? Are you a big guy getting on the umpires, or what's your philosophy on that?
Here's my philosophy, and here it is. In 29 years, I've been tossed 5 times. Okay, maybe 6. Trying to remember. I kind of left the first time it happened was in Lincoln, Nebraska at a regional. I kind of left Heather and Cindy hanging because when I went out to argue an umpire, it was really hard when we were playing in an elimination game, I believe in about 2003 in Lincoln, Nebraska. And we're all of a sudden at the end of the game, we out hit Nebraska 11-5, and we lose like 9-7, but we outwalk them 10-1 because the strike zone, I look over at Ashley DeRico. She's like, Coach, it's gone. This is what she says to me. The strike zone is gone as soon as we took the lead. So, but there's a philosophy I've had. Yes, I have chirped. Number 2, though, when I get back to the dugout, you quit talking about it, because there's a lot of coaches that get in trouble because then it becomes a crutch and an excuse for your athletes if you keep chirping about something that happened previously. That might be one reason I haven't got thrown out. But I'll have to admit, there, just like when you're speeding, there are times you speed and you don't get caught, and you get upset when you get caught, but there are probably times I should have been thrown out versus times I wasn't thrown out. So, it's kind of one of those things, there's those times, but I've gotten better at it. Hopefully I've taught some of my assistants, though. I know some of them have had their moments as they elevated themselves.
All right. So we have Gina who chimed in on the chat. And by the way, I was going back to Gina next, so this really works out. I want to give Gina a shout out. She's the head coach at Santa Clara, as I mentioned. Shortened first season, but she picked up her first 8 wins as Broncos head coach. So congratulations on that. You have been thrown out already, though. So you've also got 8 wins and your first ejection. What happened there?
So I am loud and
no indoor voice.
No indoor voice. CP would know. I got yelled at every year every day my freshman year when I was getting treatment that I didn't have an indoor voice. And so I'm just heard, and umpires don't like that. And so I did get tossed at Sac State this year, and I literally dropped my clipboard. And yes, it was in disgust of a call, but I didn't say a word. I dropped my clipboard and I got tossed for it. So he was looking to toss me from previous, he didn't like me. So it wasn't even deserved. So how many hundreds of times Kolze deserved to be tossed and he didn't? Let's get serious. The one time that I did get tossed, I didn't deserve to be tossed. So I didn't even get my money's worth. Like, let's get serious. It was so sad.
Maybe the universe is just making you pay for his sins in some weird way.
Gina, you have to learn. You have to call the umpire by his first name. That shows the respect right away. That's what coach does. That's when you know he's really serious.
I'm going to go around the horn, and I'm going to start with Gina. She gets to go first because she is the youngest coach on here. What piece of Kolze stays with you in your coaching style and in your coaching philosophy?
Oh man, that I can talk a lot. Between the two of us, it's pretty hard to get us off the phone. But I mean, it's just being a people person. So I would say more than anything, we all have our Kolze isms or jokes, and shaking hands, kissing babies. Dude, you took it right out of my mouth. So he was really good with people, with parents, with young players, other coaches. I mean, his relationships just are massive across the board. I can't go anywhere now and somebody's like, oh, I love Kolze. You played for Kolze. So just being a people person on the recruiting trail or in the world of sport, everybody knows him. And so, I definitely just think that we fit well together because we're similar in that way. And so I kind of emulate him in that way in my career.
Awesome. Heather, how about you? Same thing.
Bear, that means I'm younger than you. I'm kidding. I think just the professionalism that he goes about his business with, like, even just, this is like something so small, but like, I remember driving in the Ford Explorer with him, and, you know, on occasion we'd go get a Starbucks or something, and he would always like be super like organized, and he always had he had a brush in his glove box. He had more hair back then.
I was gonna say a brush for what?
Always prepared. Like, you know, he had to brush his hair. I mean, this was before he met Mary Jo too. So this is like before he hit the lottery. But just again, like professionalism. He was super organized and by the book, the integrity that he lived his life by, and the honesty that he he lived by. I would say those are the things I admire most, and wish I could have those kind of qualities as a head coach and a person.
That's really awesome. Cindy, I'm going to ask you the same thing. First of all, by the way, Bear, the nickname, where does that come from?
Well, I played for a travel ball team that's pretty connected with Coach and HT. And so I would, right after the game, I'd always drive with them, and they drove this really ugly green Suburban. And after the game, I would hop in the back of the Suburban and just pass out. Like I was just exhausted from, throwing it all out there on the field. No, I don't. And they would just say I hibernated like a bear. And so I thought, okay, cool. Everyone calls me Bear on travel. When I get to college, no one will know this name. And then I made it through like part of fall. And then I think HT went on her first recruiting trip and talked to my coaches, and she comes back and she's like, hey, Bear. And I thought, oh my gosh, it followed me, and it's just stuck ever since. I mean, that's what I get called now. The recruits call me it. So it's, it's my name. It's stuck with me.
Nice.
Yeah.
What part of Kolze have you taken with you on your journey as a head coach?
I had so many answers, and then I just forgot when we were talking about that. But I would say A big thing is knowing your players. So when you talk about, I wouldn't say coach was mean, but I think that coach and I had a completely different relationship. Like he knew how to get me to compete, right? And I think what he knew too is in order to go and compete with the best, like I had to be tough as nails in the circle. And he definitely prepared me for that. And sometimes it was, tough. It could have been, there were times where I remember he brought the radar gun out for a freshman that came in. And I'm thinking, he never brings the radar gun out. Like, I'd love to know how hard I was throwing. And he's, got it out and they're all gloating about the freshman. And I said, hey, bring it over here, right? And I thought, did he do that on purpose? I think he may have done that on purpose. But I was a kind of a nobody during recruiting. I remember one of our teammates, Adrian Radicek, said, I played against you. And I thought when coach said that you were coming here, I was a little concerned. And so he just knew how to get the best out of you. And so I actually just talked to one of my players today about, he would always tell me, sometimes you pitch with this and sometimes you pitch with this, and you got to know which one to do it. And I talked to one of our pitchers today and I told her that, and I thought, hopefully she knows what it means, because I know when coach told me, I didn't know what it meant right away. And then I know now. But I think the other thing is, you don't complain. We were a small program, but we were also one game away from the World Series, and coach never took no for an answer. Like if it meant like doing another Chipino feed, if it meant dragging the field himself, the field it rained, the field's not ready, he would get it ready for us. And so I've really learned that, especially during this COVID time, no job is too little for us. And I think that our girls on my current team right now have learned that from us. So I would definitely attribute that to Coach Kolze and Coach Tarr.
Before I go to Kristy and Kim, Kolze, do you have a philosophy as it pertains to like coaxing talent into its fullest expression? Like, is there a way that you go about doing that? And can you do, or do you just have a feel for it? Do you sense that you can do X, Y, and Z and kind of bring out the best in people?
No, I think what you really learn early is that you coach your team as a team, but you instruct them and talk to them as individuals, because you really have to try and learn those personalities. I remember we had a young lady when I was at UNLV, and I learned early is like talking to her versus yelling to her made a big difference after about 2 weeks. And it's like, after I learned how to talk to her versus yell at her all the time, I learned she'd run through a brick wall for you. So it's kind of a trial and error. I don't know if there's an absolute to it, but I think part of it is, and part of our philosophy when, obviously this is part of it, and everybody on this tonight understands that, whether they're past players or current players, excluding this year on where we're at and what we might be going through. We've never been afraid to be the David versus the Goliath. It's kind of like Heather said, the little sniper team. Like, we'll go play anybody. We'll raise the money to go play and take these people to go play at the University of Florida tournament, to play at the LSU tournament. Like they were saying, we go to Baylor, to go to Oklahoma. That you want to play against those people. And as a coach, you have to be ready. You might not win, but you're going to get something positive out of it. And if it's just the experience that's positive out of it, it's going to carry a long way with your athletes too. And you just try and be as positive and give them those types of opportunities and let them relish it in regards to that. They also, kind of what Heather said earlier, when you're raising money, working on the field, those types of things, your athletes appreciate it more if they're involved in the process. And that's a big part of it that a lot of youth today haven't quite figured out yet. No fault to theirs. It's just the times that you're teaching more about those things when you're getting more and more than you used to. But like right now, I'm blessed with the team that we have, because they're those types of individuals that they appreciate whatever they get, whatever they have, whenever they get it.
Kristy, what about Kolze have you taken with you on your coaching journey?
Well, there've been many things, but as I was thinking about it, I mean, one, he has great work ethic, and again, he's very resourceful. He's figured out how to get things done. If the athletic department didn't have it, or we couldn't do it one way, he found another way to do it, and so it makes you think, like, you can always try and get something done some way or another. So that's always been in the back of my head. So, the work ethic, the other thing, he always had fun. We had fun through the wins, the losses, and you didn't take everything too seriously. And so it allows you to kind of relax and enjoy the process. And I thought that he taught me to do that. And we did do that when I was there. And then as far as kind of managing, he's usually a master scheduler. And one thing that's really helped me in all the positions that I've had is finding that perfect schedule. You have to play a certain amount of teams that, are going to bring that strength of schedule up, but you got to get the other ones too. And so he's a master at that. And that's something that I felt like I've really taken away from Brian, and it's helped me in every place that I've been. But yeah, no, I mean, here's so many things, the list goes on of the things that you can take away from the experience that I had with him. But yeah, big influence on my coaching career.
Sure. Kim, last but not least, how about you with this topic, with taking something that Brian, that you saw in him with you as you went to coach Long Beach State?
I mean, so many things, but yeah, hopefully if I can just take even a little bit of just how much he cares about people, and how loyal he is to his players. He treats them all, individually, cares about them. I think that's probably the most important, or the thing I'd want to take the most, is just, how much he cares, and how he, with my coaching staff, I hope I make them feel the way he made me feel. And they're definitely, we coach together, not for me. You gotta know your boundaries and know what you're good at. And he's always done a great job, and just always made me feel special. And I think that's why he's so good. Even if he got mad, he used to get mad and blow up a little bit in the dugout and everything, but nobody got mad, because everyone knew it was coming from such a great place, and he just wanted the best for those players. And it didn't matter if he kicked the helmet or the water bucket a little bit, and it was coming from the heart, and he wanted it for you or for that player. And and just to have fun. And we always went to Chili's and had our meals together, and went around and collected items for Chipino feed. Just enjoyed people. So I think that's my favorite thing, and I hope what I take with me is caring about people the way Kolze does.
It's really well said. And one of my biggest regrets, I got to get to a softball game. I said I work in minor league baseball, so I haven't been able to get over to softball, but I need to see Kolze in the dugout. I need to see his dugout demeanor, because I'm hearing some great stories. I'm going to keep it really quick with Kim and with Kristy, because you guys came back and you coached against Kolze as coaches in the Big West. Kim, you for Long Beach State, and Kristy for UC Santa Barbara. And I'll start with Kim. What was it like to come back and coach against Brian?
You know what? It's always great to come back to Stockton. I mean, I had great memories. I mean, great times. It was a family. I still, talk to a lot of coaches. And there's some that are even at Long Beach State now. So always loved going back. It held a special place. I'll never forget one game, and we knew that they were the team to beat that year. I can't remember what year it was, but it was like the best out of 3, and we split 1-1. And we were kind of like, knew whoever wins this game is going to win conference this year. And we had one out to go, and there was a pop-up to shortstop, and we thought we had the game won and over, and it got caught in the sun, fell on the ground, and 2 runs came in, and they beat us. And I guess that was painful, but that was an awesome team that went on to win conference. And that was just one of the memories, I guess. Couldn't happen to a better person though. So, but they're always competitive, UOP, and I enjoyed going there because of the fond memory. So, except for that one.
Kolze, you remember that sunball specifically?
Sure do. 2011.
2011. Oh my gosh. That was a long bus ride.
Yeah. I remember it even more because the young lady that was at second base on it was wondering what I was doing, waving her hard home as the ball was still coming down, because it's like I could see about halfway down there was an issue that might happen, and I just didn't stop her. So
amazing.
Yeah.
Kristy, how about you? What was it like coming back to coach with the Gauchos?
Yeah, I mean, actually, I liked it so much, I decided to live in Stockton because that's where I am right now. But yeah, I mean, it's like going to a friend's house. I mean, same thing when I would go and play Kim's team, or, it's like, them so well. And of course you want to beat them. And in fact, I think the last time that I was there, we had the game probably won. And our kid who was on third base left early and got called out. And then we ended up losing that game as well. But yeah, I mean, Pacific's a great place to come back to. And after that year, we ended up moving back to Stockton. And so, but yeah, I mean, Brian, he's a good sport. It's fun. You know him in and out, and, you just hope that, it's a good game and it's competitive, and you're always pulling for each other. At the end of the day, obviously you want to win, but yeah, I mean, he's been great for Pacific, and a great mentor.
Brian, what was it like watching Heather win the national championship in 2009?
Awesome. It was the best. It really was. It was probably the best because, her going there back to her alma mater, kind of like, I didn't go to Pacific, but I'm in my hometown, that kind of thing. So she was going back home kind of thing on top of it. I know you put a lot of extra pressure on yourself too, when you go back to either where you're from and those types of things. And, I was very proud of her. I mean, it was great to watch, and that somebody you worked with was able to, accomplish that. Because you don't know, it's so hard just to get to that point. I'm just saying, just to get to Oklahoma is so hard. And I remember too that might have been her. I'm trying to think. There was one year too, she called me. We were playing. I was at Stanford for a regional. I got a phone call like at 1 a.m. from her. And it was so funny because they didn't make it to the World Series, but I'll never forget. She's like, "Boss, what?" Because we got to beat Jenny Ritter twice tomorrow at Michigan. Do you remember that, HD?
My first year
her first year. And she's like, "I need some help, man." And I go, "Well, I've only seen her on film, but all I can tell you is she loves to work fast. Try and break her rhythm. Just try and break her rhythm." Well, it worked for one game, but not for the second game. Kind of like us at Stanford that year. We got through them one time, but it's really tough to get through certain people 2 times. But for Heather, it was tremendous. I was so proud for her, but I was also proud for the school, and because she went there, she's from there, and how hard she worked, that knowing, even though back when I went there as an assistant, when I was at UNLV way back then, before like another 120 schools had been added to the sport, I just know how hard it is to get there, even one time. And they can never take that away from you.
Heather, what was it like for you to go through that experience? I want to get the other side of it too, and your perspective.
Oh my. Well, it was a long time coming, like our program that I played for at Washington, I was in the second year of the program. So the gals I played with in our fourth year of Washington softball history, we were competing for a national championship against the University of Arizona. So we got to that championship game. And so every single thing I think I ever brought to coaching, probably at Pacific, was based on my belief system of like, we can do it. And it coupled well with Kolze's like, let's go, we can beat anybody. Let's do whatever we can do to compete at that level. So that was just deep in me. Like losing the national championship game as a player lives with you for the rest of your life. And when we finally got there, it's just so many cool things happened. But like, first of all, Gina was with us, so that's probably cool for Kolze to be able to watch both of us in that moment. And I mean, how cool is that? But just going through to the opportunity to win a national championship, knocking on the door as a player and then having that disappointment and be like, we're never going to have that feeling. I do not want that feeling for these players. Like they're not going to live their lives like feeling short of getting there. So all the things we did leading up to it, we had this cool system going when we were in Oklahoma City leading up to that national championship. Our road to that national championship was ridiculous. And I bet you if I didn't coach with Kolze at Pacific, my attitude towards the road that we had to go on would have been completely different. But we didn't have stadium lights at Washington when we had the opportunity to be like a number 1 seed. And so we were a 3 seed out of 8, and we had to go on the road for regionals. That's round 1 for the national championship. So we had to get sent to UMass. And so like, it was just a bunch of crap. Like, first of all, UMass had this pitcher that nobody could hit. Her ERA was under 1. And so we get sent out there, although it wasn't on TV, nobody could watch it. We literally had the battle of our lives to get through that. So we finally make it through that. With, just a scrappy attitude that we had to have. And we get to the super regional, which again, we were on the road. And so we were gone from school this whole entire time for like 23 days. So long story short, we're finally at the World Series. We've accumulated this cool little like highlight video. And again, we like barely had any resources at Pacific. Like Cindy would ask me all the time, why don't we have video? Why can't we have video? I'm like, oh my God, Bear, if you even knew how hard it was to accumulate these damn VHS tapes and all that, like you would know, like, that's why we don't have video. But so at UW, even like, we didn't have all the resources that we ever wanted. So we just made do with what we had. So Gina would take the original tape and she would cut up the tape, make all these cool highlights from our road to Oklahoma City. And so we had this accumulating video, and like, I would end up getting this videotape and putting it on iMovie. And we had this like cool thing going. I mean, all this music going and all these highlights going. And up until the time we left, every single day, we would come to our meeting room and watch this highlight video that we made and we built on. And that's literally probably one of the biggest reasons why we won that thing, is because we kept these positive images in these players from the past performances that we had, but we just literally used all the resources that we had. We scrapped, we clawed, we kicked. It wasn't given to us. And sure enough, we were hugging after the last pitch was thrown, and we were national champions. It's surreal even to this day.
Can only imagine. Gina, what was it like for you?
Oh man, I was young, and the same thing that some of them said about Kolze right away was he let you do whatever you wanted. Like, wasn't going to micromanage, and you were free to coach a ton. And my first year coaching, I remember I was terrified because it was like I was moving back to Washington, my home state, and Heather had me on as her volunteer coach that year. And it wasn't but my second year that we won the national championship, but she was like, all right, the outfield is yours. And I was like mine, like I'm in charge of the whole thing. And that was the same thing that I'm sure she learned from Kolze. So it just comes down the line. And although I didn't have 80 responsibilities like you do when you're a lone assistant like Kim and Kristy when they started, I had one job, like literally one job, but I had the freedom to do it all the way out. Like they were mine. And so that was probably the like coolest piece, is taking that, running with it, and then becoming full-time in 09 with Coach Tarr and winning the national championship there. But I mean, we had our things like, this is your job, Gina, go do it. And I'm sure that was just exactly from the coaching tree, and I did it. And if it was clipping film on a little VHS, or they were like mini VHSs, they weren't the big ones, but then that's just what you do, and you do it, and it becomes, when it comes to fruition, it's pretty amazing.
There are many ladies on here that have built programs, and obviously championship caliber programs. And Gina, you're about to embark on that at Santa Clara. What's your vision for your program that you're about to build? And how do you draw kind of from the experience of your former teammates and former coaches that are on here?
Wow, I've learned a ton. I mean, that's the joy of kind of hopping around a little bit too. Had the opportunity to be mentored by many people, but one of the other tie-ins here is Kristy Schroeder had mentioned it, but her husband was the one that helped me build my philosophy when I was taking my master's at Pacific, and I was Kolze's volunteer coach. So everything is tied together, but building that philosophy, it stuck with me, and it's how I recruit, it's how I coach, it's everything. And so it all started, or it comes back to being at Pacific, having the opportunities, and being around people who let you run, and every piece of that. So now I'm running at a university right now in COVID, and bless us all. If I didn't know how to be a head coach, I for sure don't know how to be one in COVID, but we're doing the best we can. And I mean, we did start really, really strong, and I was really proud of the team for a start. In the first 3 weeks, we were having our best start since 2002. So we were off to a great start with good momentum and a lot of energy. Yeah, Coach Tarr came and beat us up a little bit, and that's okay. That happens. But we didn't get to conference, so I didn't get to compete against Kolze yet as a head coach. But he and I talk all the time now as peers. It's quite amazing to be on the other side, and he treats me just as he would any other head coach, which is with respect. And I do the same, and I can't wait to compete this fall, assuming COVID stays the way it is and we get a conference. So excited about that, the return to Pacific, but in the wrong colors.
Yeah, wrong colors for sure. I'll echo that. What are some of the notes that Pete taught you as far as your philosophy goes?
If you can't say it in 15 words or 25 words or less, then it's not a philosophy.
Is that it?
Well, that's what he taught me. So my philosophy is we don't work the game, we play the game.
I love it. Kolze, what do you think about that?
I think it's great. I mean, everyone, it's a tremendous philosophy, because there's very few people on this planet that played as hard and enjoyed the game as much as Gina did when she played as well. And then coming back the way she did from a serious knee injury, at the end of her freshman year, tearing her ACL, then having a great sophomore year, but then her junior and senior year being an All-American again and getting to play in postseason was huge, because she didn't get to play in postseason as a freshman because she blew her knee out. And I remember having to do my end of the year meeting with her in the hotel at Stanford, because I had to get on a red eye because I was the chair of the All-American committee. And that day we lost, and I had to do exit meetings with those that were going home and not going to summer school, and had to fly a red eye to Oklahoma City all night the next day. And we kind of made a promise to each other that we'd get back, and we did her senior year.
Cindy, you've been the head Central Florida since 2018. So what about your philosophy in building that program? And I know I mentioned before, you guys got off to the best start in program history. So you're obviously, you found something and you're well on your way, but how do you want to build your program moving forward?
Well, it's like Coach talked about a lot. So I guess I do have a slogan, but I would say you do it with people, right? So you can win with talent, but talent without leadership doesn't do anything. And so that's what we really pride ourselves on, is building the leadership, and not just in the game of softball, but learning to do everything that we do in the game of life. But I think if I had to say what our team is, it's play, recover, play. That would be our big thing, is we're still fighting our way to get through things. UCF has been a very strong softball program. It was down for a few years, but it's been a very strong softball program and traditionally, but they still have never made it past regionals. And so I would say that desire that they've had this past year, and we were kind of en route to host regionals. If you could imagine, that's like something that's so huge. And Gina, don't take it too hard. We still had best start in school history, but we got smashed by Washington as well, mostly in one inning too. So, but yeah, I would say play, recover, play. And I think the game is never over until the umpire says it's over. And I remember stories that Coach Tarr talked about when Washington, when she was a player, they scored like 8 runs with 2 outs. And I mean, she can talk to it about more. And then Coach Kolze would always say, and you go out there and you give it your best and you play your best. And when they say it's over, that's it. Right. So I don't know what the magic sauce is to it, but I would say that it's working for me and I'm just going to keep going. But one of the big things that I loved about Coach Kolze, and I think of why I became a coach and, somewhat successful coaches, he let me learn how to play without being coached every pitch. Right. And so when we went out there to play, it was us. He gave us all of the information we need. Coach Tarr gave us all the information we needed, but we weren't robots. We played and we competed. And I think that they probably learned a lot from us too. And that's what I'm doing as well. So play, recover, play. That's way more than 25 words, Gina, what I just said. And then learn from the others around you.
It's well said. We're coming down the home stretch. So I'm going to give Kolze a chance to say something, and then I'm going to get into one more important element of this. But Kolze, I'm going to give you the final word here, and not to get morbid, but this is stuff that doesn't happen for people until they die. Like, this is like a moment that people have at their funeral where stories are shared and people say great things about the person in the casket, and your corpse can't talk back. Which is a shame, because it's a shame that sometimes not until that moment do we realize how our lives have impacted others. And you have that here right now, which I think is like the ultimate. Like, you get to see exactly who you influence and what they're doing and how they're growing. So I want to give you a chance to say what you want to say to all the people here.
Well, first, I'll probably still be talking after they bury me, and there isn't anybody here.
If there's anyone that can do it, I know it's going to be you.
Yeah. If anybody can do it from the grave, it will be me. I just want to thank them, though, because this is all great, but it's more important on who you turn out than who you are. And as you can see how all these young ladies have turned out in their career, some of them beyond highly successful and way more successful than I would ever imagine. But I've also been blessed to be at Pacific this long for 29 years. Never thought that would happen. But to be blessed to have people like this willing to work with you and go on and run with it and take something, but still learn from them every day. We still talk about things. I talked to Kristy about something the other night. I talked to Gina. Well, we text back and forth today about some things. Cindy, I get to talk to not as much with the time change and the multiple children she has to take care of, but it isn't ever, whenever we see each other, it's like we've never been away, even with the 3,000 miles between us. HT and us, it's an unbelievable relationship. It's always been that way. Kim, I used to get to see all the time in the Big West. I don't get to see her as much now, which I miss tremendously. But when we do see each other, it's like, hey, have a cup of coffee. You're out there freezing your ass off at Huntington Beach at 10:30 at night, and you're standing out there watching the same kid and you're having a cup of coffee. And if you lose out on the kid and if you lose it to them, it's okay. It's part of life. And so I think what they've become is more important to me, just like the athletes, than anything that's been said tonight about us. Though I do take a high level of pride in the program and where we are, where we've been, where we'll continue to go. And I hope others that come along cherish their opportunity working with these young ladies moving forward as well.
Hey, you deserve this night, man, and you deserve this moment. So we all love you. What can we say? All right, so this is now very, very important. So we cannot have a Chipino feed this year, and anybody from the PAF can jump in. And I'm going to kind of lay it out for you what we want to do here for Brian and the program in the next 48 hours. So we're trying to raise $10,000 in 48 hours, and we have $5,000 in matching funds for that. But we'd really like to raise more if we can to offset not being able to have the Chipino feed, which, as everybody knows, and a lot of people have mentioned on here, is really the crux of the fundraising for softball at Pacific. So if you would like to donate, and maybe Tim can jump in here as far as the avenues with people and how they donated. Bree, if you wanted to unmute Tim or Aaron or one of you guys can jump in and just kind of give a layout as to how people can donate over the next 48 hours so that you kick in the matching funds. Tim, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Zach, and thanks everybody for being on. Real quick, if you look in the chat, there's going to be a link that Bree just put up there, and we're going to have a thermometer. We've been doing this with a couple of our other teams over 48 hours. You can give online via that. You can also, if you know Brian personally, you can call him if you want to send a check or do something of that nature. That's fine. But like Zach said, we've got $5,000 in matching funds. So as soon as we reach $5,000, that'll kick in. And then hopefully we can keep going. It's like Zach said, as all of you know, the Chipino feed is a major, major part of the softball program every year. It's an unbelievable event, so much fun, and we're bummed that we won't be able to have it, but that's just the circumstances we're in. So we're hoping that this will help out tonight and keep the program going and replace that money that we lost.
Can I jump in? I just clicked the link and it says one of the things that you want to buy is a Hack Attack machine. Does that mean the Hummer is officially died? And I know every player and coach on here will know the Hummer.
No, we still have it. We still have it. It's still rolling, baby. 29 years when I bought it my first year. It's still running. But you guys know as well as I do, we need to do some few upgrades. Haley Decker just said it's on its last leg. And no, Kelly Lowry, that is not the pumpkin. The bus is gone. It's a pitching machine. So, but yes, that is one of the things we're trying to upgrade in regards to that. I'm trying to help my staff more than normal since it's a little different time, if you know what I mean.
Yep. So Tim, thanks for laying that out. So the link is in the chat, as Tim said. Bree put that up. You can obviously contact anybody. They'll get you the link, and you can contact Kolze, and he'll tell you how you can donate as well. But please, let's get this done. It is so important, and let's keep building on this great legacy that we celebrated here tonight. On a personal,
Zach and Tim, before you guys go, I need help from. I think Debbie Wilson already did it, but I'll match $1,000 if the current players and parents of the program and alumni can give 1,000. So I'm in for that. But can you guys help me know?
That's awesome. Thank you. Yeah, we'll take care.
Thank you, HT.
Yeah,
it's awesome. Thank you, guys. Let's keep it going, and much love to you all. On a personal note, I can't believe this is our last Tiger Talk, at least of 2020. It's been my pleasure to host them and to get to know coaches and players more in depth, and the stories and the student athletes. It's been quite an experience, and one we didn't think we'd have this year. But I think the PAF has done an amazing job in setting up this venue where we can all kind of be together, even though we can't really gather together, so to speak. So thank you all for being here. Again, get on that link and donate what you can. We'll match it. HT with the great gesture as well. So that is about it. I want to thank you all. Happy holidays, and go Tigers. Love you, Kolze.
Love you, boss.
Yes.
Love you too.
Love you, boss.
Love you, ladies. Thank you.
thanks everybody.
Bye-bye.
Love you. Bye.
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 Thanks again.
Should we just all drink wine now?
I was gonna say maybe leave it on. You guys can all hang out and do some chatting. I was going to leave it up in case anyone needed to find the link in this chat that keeps going.
Great job, ladies. Awesome.
That was a lot of fun. It's a lot of memories, you know, it's funny.
Yeah, it's crazy because I feel like we wouldn't have done this if it wasn't the COVID. I mean, we can never come to the Chipino feed. I've always wanted to actually go and not have to freaking schlep whatever. Schlep things.
Yeah. Cordis, how are you?
Who is it? I can unmute her. Here we go.
Unmute her. You need to unmute Jay in here too.
Yeah, and Beach.
And Beej.
Okay, give me-
Marianne Kolze.
My mom,